Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Boom, boom, boom. In the deepest part of the Great Death Triangle, the Blackwater behemoth's entire body suddenly swelled up, and then its body turned into countless giant tentacles that stirred wildly in the black water. Some of the tentacles even emerged from the sea. They were pitch black and extremely terrifying. Such a scene was also sent back to the Snake Tribe civilization at the fastest speed. A monster has appeared in the Great Death Triangle. What a terrifying thing. China. In a research institute, a woman reported to Gu Yu in fear. He was wearing a smartwatch on his wrist. As he spoke, the watch projected the scene at the Death Triangle. Gu Yu's expression turned ghastly when she saw the tentacles with a diameter of over 5 meters writhing on the surface of the sea. Russia. In a remote suburbs, there were tens of thousands of Japanese people living here. Ever since the US destroyed the island nation, these Japanese people had been displaced. Later, the Human Federation was established, and they were able to have a place to live. However, fortunately, the Prime Minister of the island nation was able to avoid all crises perfectly every time. At this moment, he also learned about what had happened in the Great Death Triangle. Tentacles. Looking at the monster on the screen, the Prime Minister of Japan immediately felt his butthole tighten, and his forehead was full of cold sweat. End quote. This monster is so terrifying. I'm even beginning to suspect that the cartoonists from our island country had some unknown communication with alien creatures. Otherwise, why do so many monsters appear in comics and animation? When he said this, the Prime Minister of Japan looked like he was deep in thought, and even his face was covered in cold sweat. However, a Japanese who provided him with the information immediately explained when he heard this. Your Excellency. In fact, the snake civilization had already analyzed this point. Human civilization was built on the information technology left behind by the beast god civilization. They've been misled in many ways, and even in the dark, the beast god civilization has been secretly and unconsciously planting some information into the minds of humans. They didn't even let go of the rice dollars. A pyramid, the royal court, all kinds of anime from Japan, and all kinds of gods and demons from China, all sorts of monsters, even some science fiction movies. This was one of their ways to implant information. Other than allowing humans to accept the beast god civilization in the future, they could also quickly adapt to the reality of other creatures in the universe. Will be able to serve as the vanguard of the battle. The Japanese man who spoke looked very serious. Who? The Japanese Prime Minister took a deep breath after hearing this. He didn't give any comment on this analysis. The changes in the Death Triangle. Gu Yu was not the only one who was paying attention. The Japanese people were also paying attention to it. In fact, at this moment, the entire Snake Tribe civilization had turned on a live broadcast, showing the situation on the sea to every living creature. At this moment, the entire world was in a frenzy. You're selling goo. I've always thought that sea monsters only exist in the Ness River. Now I understand that the real sea monsters are in the Bermuda Triangle. This tentacle monster is too disgusting. All the ships that got into trouble in the past were probably destroyed by it. Some creatures were posting on the forum. Immediately, hundreds of creatures followed. Tentacle monster? I feel like it's a giant octopus. Do you see that? The monster is struggling madly. If I'm not wrong, there must be a big battle at the bottom of the sea. I just received news that the snake god has left Doomsday City not long ago. The serpent god is fighting that monster. End quote. Then I feel that the snake god will definitely win. End quote. All kinds of posts and comments emerged one after another. However, the current internet world had completely changed. It was no longer led by humans. No one knew if the person sitting on the other side of the computer was a human, a pig, a dog, or even a giant ant. When the world was unified, the evolution drug became popular and the intelligence of living beings was fully released. Although the living space of mankind was greatly compressed, the entire Earth undoubtedly became more exciting. There were even some living beings who, after seeing the abnormality, immediately found their flying ships, wanting to go over and take a look. At this moment, in the deepest part of the Death Triangle, the battle had become extremely intense. And NBSB, Hong Long Long, Chi Chi, Fireballs and death rays were thrown at the Blackwater behemoth like crazy. However, the power displayed by the monster continued to exceed Yi Bei's expectations. The tentacles that had been broken could instantly grow back, and at a much faster speed than before. The death rays and fireballs that were shot out were immediately turned into energy upon contact with the group of Blackwater behemoths and were devoured by them. "My king, this monster doesn't seem to be able to be killed." Roar. Golden Lion noticed that something was amiss and growled in a low voice, looking in Yi Bei's direction for help. "Yes, all our attacks have been devoured. This monster is capable of absorbing all forms of energy." The Blood Moon spoke. End quote. "Our attack method is useless against him. It'll only weaken him. We can heal our injured body quickly by devouring living creatures. This monster can also recover by devouring our attacks." End quote. Wang Wen flicked his tongue. After recognizing this point, his voice trembled slightly. "There must be a way. Every living being has a weakness. I can definitely kill it. However, compared to my recovery ability, I feel that the black water around me is the key. We are in the black water. It is as if we are in the monster's territory. There is an endless supply of energy around us to replenish it. We don't have any food to eat." Caesar's logic started to get messed up, but the basic meaning was still expressed very clearly. Buzz. As for Yi Bei, his eyes widened in shock. He stared at the monster. They were both level 6 creatures. He had so many apostles on his side, and they were all able to use the same power as him. In addition, although the system had warned him that this monster was extremely terrifying, it hadn't told Yi Bei that his life would be in danger. From this, it could be deduced that as long as he found the right method, Yi Bei would definitely be able to defeat this monster with ease. "You guys continue to retreat." Roar. Yi Bei growled. "Bullet time." The next moment, he activated bullet time. The Blackwater behemoth, which had been moving at high speed, seemed to have suddenly come to a standstill in front of Yi Bei. Its countless tentacles had also all stopped moving. Transformation ability. Then, the transformation ability was activated. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. His 3,000-meter-long body instantly became 1 meter long. Whoosh. After shrinking his body, Yi Bei transformed into a golden shadow in bullet time and took the initiative to charge towards one of the Blackwater behemoth's eyes. Poochie. In the blink of an eye, the golden body had destroyed one of the eyeballs. Boom. The Blackwater behemoth's eyeball was extremely large. The moment Yi Bei's fist exploded, a large amount of hydrochloric acid-like substance gushed out of it. But, under bullet time, none of this could affect Yi Bei at all. Bang, bang, chi-chi, boom boom boom. Yi Bei didn't slow down, and he successfully destroyed the first eyeball. Immediately after, he began to attack the other eyeballs as quickly as he could. In the deep sea, there were constant terrifying explosions. In less than a second, all of the eyeballs on the Blackwater behemoth's body exploded. It became blind. At this moment, Yi Bei had also ended his bullet time and returned to his original spot, wanting to see if his attack had worked. "Bastard, you deserve to die." Roar, roar, roar. The eyeball exploded. An unprecedented pain spread throughout his body. The Blackwater behemoth let out a low roar, and the killing intent on its body seemed to have materialized. As a high-level life form, he had never thought that he would suffer such an injury when he came to the lowest level of Earth. He had to take revenge for this great humiliation today. This was the only thought the Blackwater behemoth had. A roar burst out from his mouth. The Blackwater behemoth's entire body began to move. Its huge body gradually stood up. Boom, boom, boom. On the Great Death Triangle, the Black Sea water kept churning. Even the wormhole hidden in it was severely affected, as if it would collapse at any time. At this moment, in the snake civilization, countless creatures were stunned when they saw the images displayed on the Great Death Triangle through the satellite live broadcast. "What a terrifying tsunami." End quote. "The giant wave. Is something coming out of it?" End quote. "Could it be the master of those black tentacles?" End quote. "It's so scary. Even though I'm watching the images from the satellite, I can still feel the extremely terrifying aura. It's as if my life is under extreme threat and I can become food at any time." End quote. "What is it?" End quote. "It is out." End quote. All the major websites and forums were flooded with these posts and comments. In the deepest part of the Great Death Triangle. King, it's not good. This monster seems to be standing up. Its diameter is over 20,000 meters. If it really stands up, with the depth of this sea, it will only occupy a part of its body. The other part will be completely exposed to the air. Caesar exclaimed. It was a 20,000-meter tall creature. Just thinking about it was enough to know how terrifying it was. It was more than twice as tall as Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. With such a body size, he didn't even need to do anything. He could just walk a few rounds around the Earth at normal speed, or roll a few times, and the entire Earth would be turned into ruins. They're too big. If they all stand up, our attacks won't be able to destroy them instantly. In addition to his powerful recovery ability, our chances of winning are too low. The Golden Lion roared. We can't let him stand up. Blood Moon and Wang Wen said one after another. And as for Yi Bei, he squinted his eyes and stepped back. He had a completely different thought when he saw the changes in the Blackwater behemoth. He had used bullet time to blind all of the monster's eyes. Even now, those eyes had not fully recovered. Just from this point alone, it could be seen that this monster was definitely not invincible. It could definitely be killed. System. If Fire Breath, Death Ray, and even positron cannons were useless against the monster, what about its spikes? If I use my dagger to cut his body in half, will he die? Yi Bei coldly asked the system in his mind. You can try. However, all creatures above rank 5 have extremely powerful healing abilities. The Blackwater behemoth is the same. You don't have to think about killing it. The beast god civilization couldn't test your true strength, so it's good to practice on the Blackwater behemoth. The system's words carried a hint of ridicule, but these words made Yi Bei's body freeze. That's right. It was fine as long as he had the mentality of testing his strength. No matter what, he just had to try out all his attacking methods one by one. At this thought, Yi Bei's mood immediately improved. Chi. In the next second, the crisp sound of a sword being drawn rang out from Yi Bei's body. King, Golden Lion, Wang Wen, and Caesar felt their bodies turn cold and instinctively shouted. Within his line of sight, on Yi Bei's back, sharp spikes were erected. Even though he was in the Blackwater, he still exuded a terrifying chill and murderous intent. You guys just watch. Of course, if there's a chance, I'll just eat some of its flesh. The dagger appeared. Yi Bei's eyes narrowed as he said in a low voice. As for the Blackwater behemoth, which was extremely angry and was frantically moving its body in the sea, trying to crush Yi Bei into a meat patty with its huge body, it seemed to sense the danger, and its movements became even more violent. A puny ant is trying to devour my flesh. As revenge, after killing you, I'll definitely destroy this entire planet. Although his eyes were recovering and he could no longer see, he still had to deal with this matter. However, the Blackwater behemoth's hearing and spiritual power were still very strong. Even without using their eyes, they could clearly grasp Yi Bei's movements. As soon as the voice fell, the terrifying tentacles became even faster. Yi Bei could even clearly see countless black veins and muscles protruding from the tentacles. There were also countless tiny needles that were difficult to see with the naked eye. If he was not mistaken, those needles were the key to the monster's energy absorption. End quote. What a disgusting thing. Let's see if it can withstand this attack of mine first. End quote. Bullet time. The dagger thrust was revealed. Yi Bei activated bullet time again without hesitation. Chi. At this moment, its body also returned to its largest form. Then, in the deep sea, it turned into a golden flash and suddenly rushed toward the center of the Blackwater giant beast's body. Not good. Yi Bei was simply too fast. In bullet time, he had surpassed the speed of light. The Blackwater behemoth reacted very quickly at this moment. It growled, but as soon as it finished speaking, it felt a bone-piercing pain in its body. At this moment, his eyeballs finally healed completely. Within his line of sight. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, sight only. All she saw was Yi Bei, who had originally been crouching in front of her, suddenly disappear into thin air. Then, a golden light that was more than 20,000 meters long appeared in the deepest part of the Death Triangle. The Blackwater giant beast felt that its huge body had been directly cut in half from the middle. Countless black liquids spurted out. A slash of 20,000 meters. Even Yi-Bei himself was shocked by this slash. Chi. His body transformed into a huge sword, and the sharp spikes instantly cut the Blackwater behemoth in half. Yi-Bei's body was also stained with quite a lot of the Blackwater behemoth stains. Even though he had already cut off the connection between the flesh and blood, Yi-Bei could still feel that his strength was slightly draining. This monster's flesh and blood could really devour power. System, is this the monster's ability? Once you come into contact with it, even if it's just a piece of meat, your power will be absorbed. Yi-Bei immediately asked the system after cutting the Blackwater behemoth in half. It does have a corrosive power. However, this monster would not die so easily. Host, you have to be careful. The system reminded him. Still not dead? He didn't die even after being cut in half? Yi-Bei, who had stopped, was a little surprised to hear this, but he quickly calmed down. When he had first completed his evolution, his recovery ability had already been terrifying to the extreme. As long as his head was not fatally injured, he would recover completely in a short time. As expected, as soon as this thought appeared in Yi-Bei's mind, the massive Blackwater beast, which had been cut in half by the phoenix sting, began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the deep sea, the terrifying aura grew stronger and stronger. Chi. However, when the giant beast was healing this time, it had already recovered. 10,000 meters out of the 20,000-meter wide body had already stood up. The entire Great Death Triangle was filled with this monster's body. Even the white seawater above it had turned pure black. B** starts, you have completely infuriated me. I was planning to leave this planet today, but I've changed my mind. I'm going to blow up this entire planet. The Blackwater behemoth was roaring. As part of its body had surfaced, the satellites in the sky were able to capture many high-definition images of it. After the images were sent back, on the side of the snake civilization, countless creatures were amazed. On the internet, some posts kept popping up. China. In a remote suburbs. Yishan had been paying attention to the situation here ever since the Great Death Triangle had changed. Although he was already like a madman, covered in dirt, after seeing the situation over there, he actually recovered a lot of his consciousness. End quote. Monster, what a powerful monster. It must be that monster, Yi-Bei, fighting. Ha ha, this is great. Let's kill that *T serpent god and kill Yi-Bei. Let him go to hell. These voices were all shouted out hysterically. Compared to Yishan's extreme thoughts. On Earth, the creatures of the major races had a much more normal worldview. End quote. In the deep sea, the snake god must be fighting with that monster. The snake god must win. End quote. Some of the creatures were praying. So disgusting. Blarg. That monster's appearance is too disgusting. How could there be so many tentacles? A human with trypophobia was foaming at the mouth as he typed out this post with great difficulty. Speaking of which, that monster was really huge. Just the body that emerged from the water was already several thousand meters long. Its entire body is probably over 10,000 meters long. Truly inconceivable. I've never thought that such a monster would exist in this world. End quote. Yeah. I hope the Naga god can win and kill that disgusting thing. End quote. Don't worry. Everyone has seen the snake god's power before. It definitely won't fail. Although the monster was massive, most creatures had great confidence in Yi-Bei. At this moment, in the deep sea, the battle continued. This time, the Blackwater behemoth focused all its attention on Yi-Bei. His anger made his aura even stronger. Tens of thousands of tentacles were densely packed together, and they surrounded Yi-Bei from all directions. With such a density, even if Yi-Bei reduced his body to its smallest form and used bullet time, it would be impossible for him to avoid them without coming into contact. However, even in the face of such a situation, Yi-Bei didn't panic at all. Golden Lion, Wang Wen, Caesar. You guys find a good opportunity. The monster's attention is all on me now. When I fight it later, you guys just eat its meat. Although his body can absorb energy, don't be afraid. As long as the devouring is successful, your energy will also be instantly replenished. Yi-Bei's mind was spinning rapidly. Facing the attack of the Blackwater giant beast, he immediately spoke to Wang Wen and the others through his spiritual power domain. At the same time, Chi. It opened its mouth, revealing 2 rows of sharp teeth, as well as a pair of terrifying fangs at the corner of its mouth, which released intense poison in the deep sea. This time, Yi-Bei had no intention of dodging. He had the infinite evolution system and could devour anything. Perhaps the Blackwater behemoth could absorb the energy in his body, but at the same time, once it was bitten by him, with the help of the system, he could also obtain an endless supply of energy. Most importantly, his body might only be 3,000 meters long. However, if Yi-Bei was given enough time, he wouldn't be able to last long even if he swallowed hundreds of planets in a row. On the contrary, the massive amount of energy obtained from devouring would directly push him to a new height and evolve to the extreme. To understand this, when he faced the Blackwater behemoth again, Yi-Bei naturally didn't feel any fear. Roar! He roared angrily. Its 2 rows of sharp teeth glinted with a cold light. You're really looking for death. Seeing that Yi-Bei didn't dodge or hide, the Blackwater behemoth became even angrier. When its tentacles reached over, they all twisted together, and the muscles on them protruded. When they struck at Yi-Bei, it was as if they were going to instantly turn Yi-Bei into mincemeat. Buzz! It was too fast. In the blink of an eye, the tentacles struck Yi-Bei. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. What? However, after the attack hit Yi-Bei, the Blackwater behemoth was a little confused. Its tentacles had clearly hit Yi-Bei, but they didn't turn him into a pile of meat. Yi-Bei's physical defense was beyond its imagination. But soon, the Blackwater behemoth was filled with unprecedented confidence. And quote, even if you're not killed, you're dead for sure. I'll absorb all the power of any living thing that comes into contact with my body at the fastest speed possible. End quote. The voice was full of sarcasm. At the same time, he could feel a steady stream of power flowing through the tentacles into his body. Crack! Crack! However, just as the Blackwater behemoth's voice fell, a clear and crisp sound was heard. As for Yi-Bei, he opened his mouth wide and bit down on the black meat without hesitation. There was a loud crack. Although the strength in his body was rapidly depleting, when the piece of meat entered his mouth, an even stronger energy spread through his body through his mouth. Furthermore, the Blackwater behemoth's taste was beyond Yi-Bei's imagination. The deliciousness of the food had little to do with its appearance. The appearance of the species. It was more about familiarity and unfamiliarity. To a real snake, humans with limbs or centipedes with countless legs were incomprehensible. They would think that they were very ugly. As for the humans in the past, they had a sense of familiarity with strange creatures since they were young because they dared to treat all kinds of creatures as delicacies. However, if they saw strange creatures, they would also find them strange and disgusting. This was the instinct of living things. As a result, Yi-Bei had previously only thought that the Blackwater behemoth was extremely disgusting. However, after he swallowed a mouthful of meat, his thinking immediately changed greatly. The meat was rich and fragrant. There was even a sweet taste in it. As soon as it entered his mouth, it immediately turned into warm energy with the help of the system and flowed through his body. At this time, although his body was also touched by those tentacles and an endless stream of energy was being absorbed, the speed at which his body replenished energy was clearly faster. Crack, crack, crack. Once he acknowledged the deliciousness of the food, Yi-Bei no longer had any obstacles. There were simply too many tentacles around him, and he could simply open his mouth and devour them at will. Thus, deep in the sea, the brutal sound of devouring rang out continuously. As for Wang Wan, Golden Lion, Caesar, and Blood Moon, they were also the same. He had been chased by those tentacles before. Now, they simply didn't move and allowed the tentacles to approach them and devour them. Hiss! The Golden Lion's mouth was wide open, and its body was in its largest form. The row of terrifying teeth in its mouth bit off a piece of meat from the Blackwater behemoth's body, making a hiss. When the food entered his mouth, his eyes suddenly widened, and his strong appetite increased wantonly. And quote, unbelievable. This monster's smell is so unique. After swallowing a piece of meat, I feel that my body has undergone a huge change. This has never happened before when I ate other creatures. End quote. Roar. With a low growl, Golden Lion's entire body became excited, and it kept biting and tearing. This monster is big enough. There's so much meat. I can eat to my heart's content today. And when I was eating, I felt the blood in my body boil, as if I could evolve at any time. Wangwen flicked his tongue, his eyes bloodshot. It opened its mouth to the greatest extent and started to swallow it, bite by bite. Me too. What delicious meat. Blood moon, Caesar, spring, flower, autumn, moon, pursuing, joy, making, merry, and the others all said the same. At this time, the Blackwater giant beast finally realized that something was wrong, and it let out a tragic cry from its dense mouth. The tentacle that stretched out kept waving. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 minutes. When Yi Bei, Golden Lion, and Caesar devoured food, their bodies were like bottomless pits that couldn't be filled at all. The Blackwater behemoth, which was originally 20,000 meters in diameter, had lost almost 1/10 of its flesh in just 10 minutes. This time, the giant beast finally realized that something was wrong. Damn it, what the hell are you? Why was it that after devouring so much meat, he could still continue to devour, and even after so much energy had been drained from his body, he could still continue to devour? There's no way such a monster would appear on this planet. He roared in a low voice. But at that moment, Yi Bei and the others, who were happily devouring the Blackwater behemoth, couldn't be bothered to pay any attention to it. 20 minutes. After a full 20 minutes passed, the struggling Blackwater behemoth realized that Yi Bei, Golden Lion, and the others were stuck to its body like leeches. It couldn't get rid of them no matter how hard it tried. It didn't matter if it whipped them with its tentacles or pierced them through their bodies. They couldn't be killed. They were even constantly absorbing its energy. It finally felt fear and terror. And quote, "All of you stop. I'll leave through the wormhole immediately. I promise I'll never come back to this planet again. Don't continue. Otherwise, I don't mind self-destructing and completely destroying this place." End quote. The Blackwater behemoth threatened with a hysterical voice. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Yi Bei still didn't respond. Crack, crack. Chi-chi. Sila Sila. As Yi Bei continued to devour the energy, the powerful energy warmed his body. It was like an addictive drug, and he had no intention of stopping. On the contrary, the speed of the devouring increased, and the sound of food being devoured kept reverberating in the sea. Under the surveillance of the satellite, and NBSB, Hong Long Long. Above the death triangle, the sea water had turned completely black, and countless vortexes of different sizes were spinning. But at this moment, countless creatures were watching the latest video and began to cheer. Look, everyone look. That monster seems to be dying. It's going to fall. End quote. Yes, yes, I saw him struggle for more than 20 minutes. His body is even more crooked. End quote. Other than being big, this guy doesn't pose any threat at all. It seems that the Serpent God and the others have already mastered the method to attack him and are now making this monster suffer a terrible attack. However, it seems that the land in the former us has encountered a big problem. The huge waves on the Great Death Triangle and the terrifying tsunami in the deep sea. It won't be long before the Black Sea water will drown half of the former us. It's fine as long as we win. On the internet, different races and different living beings were all expressing their opinions. Walala. In the deep sea of the Death Triangle, as its body was continuously devoured, the Blackwater giant beast finally felt the breath of death. He had even dared to threaten Yi Bei and the others. But now, he had directly cowered. No, don't kill me. I can tell you all the secrets of the universe. Please, please stop eating. His body shook violently. But in the face of Yi Bei and the others, who had gone mad from eating too much, it was completely useless for him to beg for mercy. After an hour, read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. An extremely terrifying thing happened in the Great Death Triangle. The Blackwater behemoth, which had a diameter of more than 20,000 meters, didn't self-destruct even when it died. Its huge body was completely devoured by Yi Bei, Golden Lion, Caesar, Blood Moon, Wangwen, Spring, Flower, Autumn, Moon, Pursuing, Joy, Making, and Merry. Hoo. The Great Death Triangle regained its calm. Yi Bei and the others were in the deepest part of the cave, because they had devoured too much energy. Everyone's bodies, including Yi-Bei's, began to undergo tremendous changes. Death. The monster on the big triangle disappeared. On Earth, the creatures of the Snake Tribe civilization who were watching the live broadcast were all dumbfounded. Sounds similar to this were constantly heard. Walala. In the sea around the Death Triangle, waves that were hundreds of meters tall kept spreading in all directions, and a terrifying aura spread on the sea. However, in the deepest part of the Death Triangle Sea, this place was extremely peaceful. A giant python with a diameter of more than 3,000 meters was coiled in it. Every breath it took exuded a terrifying aura. Next to them were a giant golden lion, a reticulated python that was also more than 1,000 meters long, a giant blood eagle with a blood-red body, a fierce-looking monkey with scars all over its face, and 8 blood pythons. However, everyone was extremely quiet. However, their bodies were changing at a speed visible to the naked eye. King, I seem to be able to feel the cells in my body and the gene chains all collapsing and reassembling. This situation should have made me feel an unprecedented pain. But now, not only is there no pain, but my entire body feels extremely comfortable, even more so than when I'm devouring my prey. What's going on? The fur on Golden Lion's body was all standing up. His eyes were red, as if they were soaked in blood. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse and full of doubt. When he had evolved in the past, only his body size and strength had increased. He had not been able to observe the situation inside his body. This was the first time he had encountered something like this. Me too. I can feel my genes changing, and it's extremely clear. It's as if a terrifying power is awakening in my body. Wang Wen immediately replied, "This feeling is great. If it's possible, it would be even better if I could devour another monster like this." The Blood Moon said, "Evolution. He's definitely evolving. However, what will we look like after the evolution?" Caesar gritted his teeth. As for Yi-Bei, his body was curled up. When he heard everyone's voices, his own body was actually undergoing a drastic change. Countless black energy lines were swimming in his body, and his body was also growing rapidly. The power in his body was also changing every second. Devouring a level 6 creature. The benefits he would gain would undoubtedly be immense. This place is still safe. What Caesar said was right. After devouring the Blackwater behemoth, because of the biological level, you have already broken your original genetic limit. Now, all of you have begun to evolve. In addition, don't worry, after the evolution is complete, you will still be yourself, but you will become stronger, as if you have been reborn. Yi-Bei said to Golden Lion, Wang Wen, and the others as he sensed the changes in his body. The process of evolution was undoubtedly very long. 1 day, 2 days, 10 days. As time passed, what happened in the Great Death Triangle was gradually forgotten by the creatures of the snake civilization. 20 days, 30 days. Yi-Bei had always been entrenched in the deepest part of the sea. Buzz. On this day, he felt an extremely powerful force forming in the deep sea, so he suddenly opened his eyes. When he looked at Wang Wen, Golden Lion, and the others again, he realized that they had completely changed after their evolution. Roar. Golden Lion was the first to complete his evolution. He stood up and let out a loud roar at the bottom of the sea. The sound waves spread out for tens of thousands of meters. At this moment, the color of Golden Lion's body had completely changed. Its originally golden hair had turned silver. Every strand of hair was like a silver needle. However, it was extremely strange. Under normal circumstances, it was extremely soft. However, as long as he controlled the hair to stand up, it would become extremely strong. It could even pierce through steel plates in an instant. In addition, the Golden Lion's body had reached a length of 50 meters. The height reached 26 meters. If an ordinary lion were to come before him while he was standing at the bottom of the sea, it would be no different from an ant. This was only the surface, and the changes in the details were needless to say. Chi. Other than Golden Lion, Wang Wen had also changed a lot. The length of his body had also increased to 2,800 meters, only slightly smaller than Yi-Bei's. Teeth also grew out of his mouth. Furthermore, several strands of beard had grown out from the side of his mouth. It seemed like he was about to evolve in the direction of a dragon. The color of his body had also undergone a complete change. Like the Golden Lion, His body was silver white. Caesar, the blood moon. Spring, flower, autumn, moon, pursuing, joy, making, merry, their bodies were the same. If he wasn't mistaken, this change was due to the Blackwater Behemoth's genes, which had an effect on them at the same time. As a level 6 creature, its genes had the initiative in certain factors, which was completely understandable. As for Yi Bei, he had also devoured a large amount of meat. However, the color of his body did not change at all. It was entrenched in the depths of the sea, and its entire body was golden, which made it stand out even more. Very good. This time, everyone has evolved, and their strength should have become very powerful. Let's find a chance to test it out. Chi. Yi Bei flicked out his tongue, his voice calm. After all, his own body had already evolved countless times. He had long lost the novel feeling he had at the beginning. However, Golden Lion and Wang Wen were different. This feeling is great. I feel like my strength has increased by at least 100 times. Caesar's body had reached a height of more than 10 meters. After hearing Yi Bei's words, he finally snapped back to his senses and exclaimed in surprise. However, although Caesar had completed his evolution, the scar on his face had not disappeared, and he still looked extremely ferocious. Me too. I'm much stronger than before, and my current body is on a completely different level from the lion's body. I feel that with my current strength, even if I face the beast god civilization's warship again, I won't have any fear. Golden Lion continued. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. My king, can we leave now? I can't wait to test my strength. If I fly in the air, with my current body strength, it's terrifying enough. The blood moon spoke. Its entire body turned from blood red to silver white. His skin had a metallic feel to it, and his body had also grown a lot bigger than before. There was also an indescribable sense of beauty about him. After hearing these words, Yi Bei slowly opened his mouth to speak. The Great Death Triangle is a wormhole that connects to the outer universe. As for the Blackwater Behemoth, it was injured in an accident and was recovering here. It was ready to go back through the wormhole at any time. Yi Bei said very calmly, and quote, "It's good that everyone can evolve together this time, but now is not the time to test our strength. Let's stabilize the wormhole first." End quote. As he said this, Yi Bei raised his head slightly. Even though the Great Death Triangle was gradually returning to its peaceful state. However, the huge black whirlpool was still forming in this sea. A huge amount of power was continuously released from it. However, Yi Bei didn't know much about wormholes. In fact, he didn't even know how to use them. The main reason Yi Bei had come here today was to solve the problem of the wormholes. As for the Blackwater Behemoth, it was just something he did in passing. A wormhole. The Golden Lion stood up and asked curiously. The beast god civilization came out from this place. If I'm not wrong, this place can directly connect to the outer planets. The so-called wormholes, in layman's terms, are just portals to other planets. However, we've combined the technology of the beast god civilization and the information of the human civilization, but so far, we haven't had any leads. Caesar looked very fierce, but his words were full of knowledge. Then, what are we going to do next? Wang Wen was puzzled. Let's enter the wormhole and take a look. Or rather, find out the structure of the wormhole nearby. If I'm not mistaken, there must be some high-tech hidden nearby that can even block my spirit scan. Caesar continued. Can't wormholes be naturally formed? That's right. End quote. It's too profound. I feel that Caesar's thinking is too complicated. End quote. At the side, Wang Wen, Golden Lion, and Blood Moon all ridiculed. As for Yi Bei, after hearing this, he slowly opened his mouth and said, Actually, Caesar is right. The beast god civilization could return through this wormhole and leave through it. At the very least, this explained one thing. This wormhole was definitely not formed naturally. It was man-made. To be able to create such a thing, one must have sufficient technology. If we want to break free from Earth's restraints, just anti-gravity technology is definitely not enough. Even if we can move faster than light speed, it's still too slow in the universe. Even flying out of the solar system would take a long time. We have a long life. However, if they were to stay in a spaceship for decades, I don't think anyone would be able to withstand it. When Yi Bei said this, He had basically determined the path that the Snake Tribe civilization would take in the future. He had to master the wormhole technology. Then, how do we find the wormhole technology? Golden Lion continued to ask. End quote. In the center of the Great Death Triangle, there has been a huge black vortex since the Beast God civilization appeared. Let's go in directly. If we're lucky, we might be able to enter another life planet through that wormhole. End quote. Chi. Yibei flicked his tongue. After saying this, he immediately cut through the pitch-black seawater and rushed toward the center of the Death Triangle. We'll know once we go and take a look. If I really teleport to other planets, I can start a massacre. End quote. I wonder what it feels like to travel through wormholes with my body. End quote. Golden Lion, Wang Wen, and the others quickly followed. Their speed was extremely fast. They could even devour the Blackwater giant beast. In addition to their body's evolution, they were now in a state of peak confidence. They couldn't wait to immediately unleash all their power. Who? Yibei ignored them. As his body charged towards the center of the Great Death Triangle, he released all of his spiritual power domain, not letting go of any corner. However, with the release of the spiritual power domain, Yibei increasingly felt that the Great Death Triangle was filled with mystery. Countless types of energy were mixed together. It was in an incredible triangular shape, yet it was still able to bind the energy within it. Inside, there were all sorts of alternating magnetic fields. Even his mind power domain couldn't play much of a role in this. 1 minute. 10 minutes. Fortunately, Yibei's current body was strong enough, so this kind of energy turbulence wouldn't cause much damage to his body. However, it was not a good idea to continue searching without any clues. King, we found something. Just as Yibei was considering whether to find another group of mutated beasts to search the Great Death Triangle, Caesar suddenly shouted. And MBSB, whoosh whoosh whoosh. Upon hearing his voice, Yibei, Golden Lion, and Wang Wen immediately cut through the black water and rushed over as fast as they could. At this moment, Caesar's body was suspended in the black water. His huge body was actually trembling slightly, and even the depths of his pupils were filled with fear. When Yibei rushed over, he immediately understood why Caesar was acting this way. I finally know what's going on. Chi. Sticking out his forked tongue, Yibei's voice was slightly cold. In the naked eye, he could vaguely see light gray lines wrapped around Caesar's body. In fact, it wasn't just those lines that would release a trace of strange energy to form a pair of triangular eyes. The strange energy in those eyes was flowing, and it could produce something that could affect spiritual energy. The moment he saw the eye, 3 words immediately appeared in Yibei's mind. Demon's Eye. Caesar, you can retreat first. Yibei continued. He also had a new understanding of the Beast God civilization's technology and their civilization level. The Beast God civilization's battleships that had been destroyed and the Beast Gods that had been devoured were probably at the bottom of the Beast God civilization. Tens of thousands of years ago, they had mastered wormhole technology, Demon's Eye, soul orbs, and other things. They could even hide the core of wormholes in the deep sea, which was very difficult to detect with mind power or the naked eye. Yibei would never believe that the entire Beast God civilization was as fragile as the non-Vanguard battleship. King, could this be the key to constructing a wormhole? Caesar retreated. His eyes were filled with fear. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. Just now, when he was entangled by those gray lines, he even felt cold all over for a moment, as if his soul had been pulled out. It should be. These gray lines can release energy. If I'm not wrong, this is the entrance to a space fragment. The core device for creating a wormhole is all inside that space fragment. Yibei immediately gave his conclusion. After he finished speaking, the spines on his back appeared, and his huge body rushed forward without any hesitation. Spatial technology. Although the Snake Tribe civilization had very little knowledge in this area, but after having the Forest of Death and the Exile Space, Yibei clearly realized that the Beast God civilization had definitely mastered this technology. On the Great Death Triangle side, Yibei hadn't discovered anything with his mental power domain after entering the deep sea. Now that he saw the Demon's Eye, everything could be explained. The chaotic energy in the surroundings, would not appear for no reason. Those gray lines were connected to the space fragments. This meant that the violent energy that appeared in this sea area was all transmitted from that spatial fragment. Spatial fragment? My king, could it be that the race that created this wormhole had carved out a separate space in this sea region? It's hard to believe, but when I hit that gray line just now, I really had a feeling that it was the entrance. Caesar said in a low voice as he watched Yi Bei rush forward. As for Golden Lion, Wang Wan, Blood Moon, and the others, they didn't waste any time and followed closely behind Yi Bei. Buzz, buzz, under the observation of his spiritual power and the naked eye. At that moment, Yi Bei could clearly see that, right in front of him, the demon's eye, which was formed by gray lines, was fluctuating with energy from time to time. Boom. Increased the speed. When his body collided with the fluctuation, Yi Bei's eyes widened. At the same time, a loud bang was heard. His body didn't rush in. And quote, there's indeed a hidden space, and it's very strong in defense. End quote. After his first attempt failed, Yi Bei stopped and immediately said, then what do we do? Caesar's eyes began to show a look of excitement. If they could enter this place, it would not take long for the snake civilization to master space technology. This was definitely something to be excited about. Continue to crash. Yi Bei didn't hesitate at all. In fact, he had only used 1/10 of his strength in the attack just now. It could be considered a slight test. He was worried that he would use too much strength and destroy the space fragment. The surrounding black water would enter and damage all the instruments. And NBSB, Hong Long Long. On the second collision, the force was increased by 1/10, but it still did not break. Boom. The third time. Bang bang bang. The fourth time. Crack. Finally, on Yi Bei's fifth collision, there was no more loud, red bang. Instead, there was a cracking sound like glass breaking. I'm about to succeed. Yi Bei's eyes lit up. Clang. The next moment, the power increased again. With a clang, it was as if a door had been directly broken. Yi Bei's vision turned black, and then he found himself in a completely unfamiliar place. Golden Lion, Caesar, Wang Wan, and Blood Moon also followed. It was indeed an independent space. But the things here looked extremely magical. Clang, clang, clang. Countless giant bronze devices were operating at high speed, like the engine of a car, making an ear-piercing sound. The space was huge. It was at least 50,000 meters in diameter. However, there were bronze-colored devices here, and there were countless strange patterns carved on them. Could it be that these things are the ones that created the wormhole? Caesar was the first one to speak after he entered. His words were filled with shock and disbelief. Whoosh! As soon as Yi Bei entered the room and saw the constantly operating devices, he immediately released his mental power domain and scanned them all. The more he scanned them, the more shocked he became. The number of maintenance engines has reached 10,088. The metal used is unknown, but the surface of all the metal has been plated with copper. In addition, each of these devices is hidden with a spiritual pearl. In addition, these devices are connected to the sea area through gray lines. Every minute and every second, they are creating various huge energy sources by decomposing seawater. With the help of these energy sources, we can achieve perpetual power. Yi Bei muttered to himself as he flicked out his forked tongue and watched the shocking scene before him. When technology was developed to the extreme, it was a very terrifying thing. At the very least, the psychological shock it brought was extremely powerful. And quote, I don't understand the mechanism at all. If we want to study it, we can only take some of the devices here to the ground and let all the professional creatures study it together. This way, it won't take long to crack it. End quote. Caesar was also looking at these devices seriously. However, these devices seemed to have an endless supply of power. Other than that, there was no way to know the key information such as the internal structure, the operating principle, and why wormholes were formed. Don't move. Although these devices seemed to be separated, they were actually a whole. Once one part is touched, the entire device will be completely destroyed. Not only will the fragment space collapse, but the wormhole will also disappear. Yi Bei immediately berated Caesar when he saw that Caesar was about to use his hand to pull off one of the devices. When he observed the equipment with his mental power, he discovered that they were a single entity. as if they had been formed in one go through some special method. Even Yi Bei was shocked. The bronze metal took up an extremely large area. If it was really a one-time use machine, how large would the machine tool be? Just the thought of it was terrifying. Hearing Yi Bei's words, Caesar immediately retracted his hand and said, "Whole? Then, Your Majesty, what should we do now? If that's the case, there's only one way, and that's to get everyone here and study it directly here. It'll be easier once we've cracked the technology." "This is a good idea." "Then that's it. I think it's possible." Blood Moon, Golden Lion, and Wang Wen said one after another. But, just as Yi Bei was about to share his thoughts, crack. There was a crisp crack. The bronze engines that had been constantly operating had all stopped. And quote, "This is bad. Could it be that because we barged in, this space has stopped operating, and even the wormhole is going to disappear?" Caesar's eyes changed. He cried out in his heart. On the other hand, Yi Bei appeared extremely calm at this moment. "It seems that my previous guess was wrong. These things will only generate power when the wormhole is in use. Under normal circumstances, they are constantly absorbing the energy from the sea. Next, let's observe if there are any operating tables around. If possible, it's not a bad idea for us to directly control the operation of this wormhole." Yi Bei continued. However, just as he finished his sentence, read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. In the fragment space that had become extremely quiet, a faint sizzling sound suddenly rang out, as if some electric current was forming. After a second, in the center of this space, a semi-transparent cube-shaped screen suddenly lit up. The cube had 6 faces. On each face, there was a beast god with a different appearance. In the fragment space, the sound of the electric current continued. As the projection of a cube appeared in the center, Yi Bei immediately released his mental power domain and frantically scanned the entire space. However, the final result, made Yi Bei's eyes gradually widen, and he was filled with doubt and confusion. And quote, "This shouldn't be the case at all. In this place, there's no projection equipment other than those bronze spatial engines. How did this cube appear?" Yi Bei muttered to himself. On the other hand, Caesar and the others were exclaiming in shock. "It's a living AI. This kind of cube screen has appeared in many science fiction movies in human civilization. If I'm not mistaken, this is the control console we're looking for." Caesar's eyes widened. What a magical technique. Wait for a moment. The beast gods above seem to be talking. The blood moon flapped its wings slightly. Let's hear what they have to say first. Wang Wen also spoke. Snowflakes appeared on the square screen from time to time, but it quickly stabilized. And quote, "I didn't expect a foreign creature to come to this place. Now, you only have one choice, and that is to get out of here as quickly as possible." End quote. On one of the surfaces, a beast god said slowly. His voice was hoarse. There was a bit of killing intent. After hearing this, Yi Bei, Golden Lion, Wang Wen, Blood Moon, Caesar, Spring, Flower, Autumn, Moon, Pursuing, Joy, Making, and Mary were all stunned. "King, this thing, isn't its intelligence too high?" Caesar couldn't help it. "I don't care what you are. If you don't have the strength, then stop talking nonsense. If you dare to say one more word, do you believe that I'll just swallow you whole?" Wang Wen flicked out his tongue. After he regained his senses, he became aggressive. End quote. "Our purpose for coming here is very simple. Hand over the control of this wormhole, as well as the technology." End quote. Yi Bei spoke up. He didn't waste any time and went straight to the point. But, just as Yi Bei and the others were all treating the cube as some kind of intelligent life, in the depths of the universe, in a pitch-black place, there was no sound at all. Countless stars were flashing in the surroundings, and countless strangely shaped meteorites were floating in the air. This scene was extremely shocking. And in this place, a huge bronze universe ship was floating here. Inside the spaceship, in an extremely luxuriously decorated hall, there were 6 huge stone chairs with their backs facing each other. On each chair, there was an extremely strange-looking beast god. These chairs were also marked with numbers 1 and 6. The air was filled with a majestic and cold aura. Compared to the Lamia that had gone to Earth, any one of these 6 beast gods was enough to kill him in seconds. End quote. These monsters should be the species mentioned in the information sent by the Lamia back then. To be able to destroy the human slaves we left on Earth back then is enough to prove that they are very powerful." End quote. The beast god, who was sitting in the second seat, spoke. His voice was hoarse, but his tone was extremely calm and without any fluctuations. Not only humans, even the Lamia had been defeated. These creatures could use some means of attack. It doesn't look like a carbon-based life form, but more like the power of the machinery race. If I'm not wrong, they might not be a species from Earth. Beast God number 4 immediately replied, but his tone showed that he did not care at all. It can't be the automaton race. In the universe, the automaton race is as difficult to deal with as the Zerg race. If it was really them, the entire solar system, even the entire Milky Way would have been occupied long ago. Beast God number 5's body swayed slightly. Actually, I think these creatures are more like some prehistoric species that once appeared on Earth. Worm dragons, pythons, and even dinosaurs. The only difference is that they have unlocked their abilities and gained high intelligence. Beast God number 1 concluded. Now, should we continue to communicate with these monsters? Beast God number 6 said. If eBay were to hear this and see the situation here, he would definitely be extremely shocked. In the Great Death Triangle, in the space fragment that controlled the wormhole, the 6 beast gods were projected from the cube. Let's continue to talk. Let's test them first. If they were suspicious and wanted to mess around, he could set up a fake link target for the wormhole and send them to a dead planet. After all, Earth is the mother planet of our beast god civilization, and the wormholes there must not be destroyed. If there is a chance, we can go back. Beast God number 1 continued. And quote, what if they try to crack the space technology? Beast God number 6 asked again. And quote, some of the theories they are firm on are actually wrong settings that we have deliberately thrown out. Similarly, we just need to mix some wrong information into space technology. End quote. All right, that's a good idea. In the hall, the beast gods spoke one after another. And in that space fragment, the conversation between Yi Bei and the cube was also in progress. It's not a problem if you want to hand over the wormhole technology, but how much are you willing to pay? For example, it's not a bad idea to let me study your genetic makeup. The price? I'm sorry, but I'm only asking you to hand over the technology. Otherwise, I don't mind completely destroying this place. At least without the wormhole, your beast god civilization will never be able to come back so easily. Yi Bei narrowed his eyes. But as soon as he said this, the system's voice rang out in his mind, and Yi Bei almost vomited blood. Host, what you're facing right now is not some living AI, nor is it a pre-recorded video. These 6 beast gods were the high-level controllers of the entire beast god civilization. They just want to get more information about you. The system's reminder came very unexpectedly. When Yi Bei heard this, his expression immediately changed. The feeling of being played by other creatures made him very unhappy. Earth is too small. It's nothing in the entire universe. Even destroying the entire Earth would be very easy. Right now I'm negotiating with you guys. It's best not to use that arrogant tone. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. The voice in the cube continued. When Yi Bei heard this, he quickly calmed down. If these beast gods wanted to scare him, he could scare them back. Everyone, if I'm not mistaken, you must be the higher-ups of the beast god civilization. You're able to communicate with us through some technological means. Just like you said, Earth is too small and is nothing. But at the same time, the beast god civilization is also very weak compared to the entire universe. I'd like to see who will be destroyed first. Chi. Yi Bei flicked his tongue, his eyes narrowed slightly, and they were filled with coldness. In the depths of the universe, in the hall of the bronze warship, the 6 beast gods, who had been very calm, suddenly paused. What's going on? How did this guy know our identities? Beast god number 2's voice carried a hint of surprise. And quote, could it be that when the vanguard battleships of the Lamia went to Earth, they intercepted them and obtained the information from them? Beast god number 4 guessed. Impossible. The Lamia doesn't even know of our existence. Furthermore, that spaceship is the lowest-end spaceship in our civilization. The information they have access to is very limited. Beast god number 1 immediately shook his head in denial. In the depths of his heart, there were also many waves. Then, he looked forward and revealed a fierce look. And quote, "Are you threatening me? This space is under my control, and all the devices here can explode instantly. I can kill you at any time." Yi-Bei was extremely calm and unmoved. There was even a hint of mockery in his voice. "Is that so? Then you can try. If you can really threaten us, you wouldn't have said so much nonsense, right? Very good. You've successfully angered me." Beast God number 1 was truly enraged this time. Immediately informed the others to speed up and break out of the encircle, and then return to Earth. This group of disgusting monsters, when we left Earth for a period of time, did they really think that it was their territory? Beast God number 1 growled. Just as he finished his words, the screen in front of him emitted a sizzling sound, and the image inside instantly turned into snowflakes. In the fragment space, as soon as Yi-Bei finished speaking, a burst of positron attack erupted from his eyes without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, the cube was shattered into pieces. "My king, this is..." Caesar asked Yi-Bei in confusion. "This thing is not an intelligent life form, nor is it the control panel here. The one who spoke to us just now was actually the upper echelons of the Beast God civilization. To put it simply, we were just having a video call with the upper echelons." Yi-Bei explained. "What?" Caesar cried out in surprise. Yi-Bei's words had directly overturned his logic. The Beast God civilization must be very far from here, at least more than light years. What kind of signal can be transmitted so quickly? Directly implement the current affairs news. The Golden Lion roared. "If that's the case, it can be explained. Earth is a separate dimension. The Beast God civilization is also a separate dimension, and the place we are in right now is the same. The distance between the two spaces was not far. Perhaps it's just an extremely thin film." Caesar's mind was working quickly. However, after he said this, his eyes suddenly widened. Then, he shouted, Maybe I know the principle of wormholes. I know how they operate. Space, different spaces. Perhaps the distance is far enough, but space is only separated by a layer. As long as you pierce through it, you can instantly enter another world, even an extremely distant world." "What do you mean?" The Blood Moon did not understand at all. "Caesar?" The Golden Lion's fur fluttered slightly. On the other hand, Yi-Bei seemed to have understood something after hearing Caesar's words. Yi-Bei, could enter the Forest of Death, but every time he came out of the Forest of Death, he would land in a different location. In other words, as long as he could grasp this principle through the Forest of Death, Yi-Bei could go to any place he wanted to go without any obstacles. The Forest of Death was just a transit point for Yi-Bei to travel to other places. End quote. "Don't destroy this place for the time being, Caesar. I'll give you a week's time. Within this week, you can bring some professional creatures over to crack the device here." End quote. Yi-Bei continued. After destroying the cube just now, Yi-Bei could totally imagine how furious the beast gods would be. They would definitely try to find a way to return to Earth. "Yes, my king." Caesar's voice was full of excitement as he was waiting for this sentence. End quote. "If you've decided, then leave for now. My spiritual force domain has already locked onto this place. If you want to come, you can come at any time. You don't have to worry about not being able to find the exact location in the future." End quote. Yi-Bei continued. Yes. Crack. And so, Yi-Bei led this group of people and created another hole in the fragment space, leaving easily. The next day, Yi-Bei led the way. Caesar immediately gathered all the top elite creatures of the snake civilization and entered the fragment space together. At the same time, they brought countless instruments and began their research. The 10th day, the research had made a breakthrough. It turned out that the devices themselves were a giant control console. As long as they were operated at the same time, the entire place would change, including the level of energy. On the 20th day, his cracking speed had already reached 80%. The wormhole technology made these elite members of the snake civilization forget to eat and sleep. They were extremely excited. The 30th day, for 30 consecutive days, Caesar had also been immersed in this high-intensity work. In addition to having powerful combat power, Caesar himself was also a very terrifying scientist. He had super intelligence, and the knowledge in his mind was countless. It was also on this day that he was standing in front of a device. Suddenly, her body stiffened, and she quickly shouted at Yubei, who was crouching there. "My king, I think we've succeeded. We can now completely control the devices here. We even know the principles behind them." End quote. This space is really a transfer station. But through these devices, he spread the energy out and expanded the area of the transfer station, covering the entire Great Death Triangle, forming the so-called wormhole. End quote. The voice at the beginning was full of excitement. The elites of the snake civilization also stopped. "I've succeeded. I've finally succeeded. This technique isn't very difficult. However, it's of great significance. With this technology, we can definitely perform space travel. In the future, we can go to other planets to look for food." These elites began to shout in excitement. None of the solemnity they had at the beginning or the shock they had felt when they first arrived. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. You succeeded? It had been 30 days. Yubei had been sitting there the entire time, observing the energy fluctuations around him. When he heard Caesar's words and saw the reactions of these guys, he slowly opened his eyes. He didn't feel too surprised about cracking the wormhole. However, at this moment, Yibei's eyes were extremely deep. Mastering the wormhole technology meant that the era of the great universe was about to begin. Great Death Triangle, deep in the sea. Inside the fragment space, the sound of cheering continued. "Very good, Caesar. Immediately send out all the technology here and immediately gather the elites of the entire snake tribe to research it. I must completely master this technology," Yubei said. Immediately after, he brought these guys out of this place and returned to Earth. Hence, in the following period of time, Earth underwent a huge transformation once again. Simon was one of the humans who had witnessed the changes on Earth. He was originally an elite of the US's upper class. When the snake civilization and the beast god civilization had just appeared, he had also criticized them crazily. Later on, when the golden-haired president led the US to surrender to the beast god civilization, Simon had also agreed. It could be said that he had experienced all the changes on Earth, especially what had happened in the space of exile. That was the most tragic day of his life. In order to survive, he had eaten human flesh. He killed his friends. He had even made the dirtiest deals. During that period of time, he didn't even want to admit that he was human. It was just that in the past, Simon's heart was filled with anger and grievance. He felt that it was a great humiliation for humans to be ruled by a group of wild beasts. Although he had accepted the fact, deep down in his heart, he dreamed of being reborn into the era of human rule. But, as time passed, the snake civilization gradually took control of the Earth and divided the human federation, giving humans a chance to survive. At the same time, countless mutated beasts were assigned to their own countries. The different races could trade and communicate with each other, and under the control of the upper echelons of the snake civilization. Although the major races had their own countries and territories, they could visit each other and learn their culture. They didn't have to worry about being eaten by those countries. If there are some restless fellows who are bloodthirsty, they can go to Doomsday City in the Eastern Sea and kill as many people as they want. Of course, they must be prepared to be killed before they go. Hence, under the various rules. In the end, Simon was shocked to discover that Earth's ecosystem and technology were both advancing at an extremely fast speed. Even the various beasts that had once been treated as food by humans had displayed astonishing wisdom. Among them, there were countless great existences. Anti-gravity technology, the positron cannon, 3D vision, a supersonic train, a spatial gate. In a short period of time, the snake civilization not only rebuilt the Earth after the disaster, but also pushed civilization and technology to a new height. Today, Simon stood in front of a newly built space gate and felt the changes on Earth. His body trembled slightly, and some of his deep-rooted beliefs also quietly changed. In the past year, the development of science and technology has been too rapid. In the Pan-Human Alliance, skyscrapers were everywhere, and prices were very low. Other than that, there were anti-gravity cars, artificial smartwatches, and even space gates. One could travel millions of kilometers with one's eyes closed. If Earth had not suffered such a tragic change back then, with the strength of humans, it would probably take at least 100 years. No, even 100 years. Even I might not be able to create such a dreamlike thing. He muttered. As he spoke, he raised his head and looked at the huge spatial gate that was more than 1,000 meters wide. The space gate was surrounded by a magnificent concrete building. From a distance, when the gate was opened, there were layers of silver light screens in the middle. But at every moment, there were humans and other creatures shuttling back and forth. The space gate was completely free. And today, Simon was planning to go to the Ant Kingdom to take a look. Long ago, he had heard from some humans that the buildings in the Kingdom of Ants were incomparably majestic and spectacular. This was also Simon's first time making up his mind to go on a trip. In the past, he would never have dared to imagine such a thing. I suddenly have a feeling that the world now might be better. Humans may have created a civilization, but the snake tribe has truly placed their race in a fair position. When he crossed the spatial gate, Simon even had such a thought in his mind. In fact, it was not just Simon. During this period of time, the state of the snake tribe civilization and the rapid development of science and technology had made almost all the living humans deeply feel these changes. Many people even felt ashamed when they thought of their actions against the snake tribe civilization. The change in technology and the advancement of civilization. Ever since Yi Bei had returned from the Great Death Triangle, he had been occupying the central area of Eastern Sea City. After devouring the Blackwater behemoth, he had also obtained a massive amount of energy. All aspects of his body had also been strengthened to an unprecedented extent. My king, with the efforts of the entire snake tribe, more than 5,000 space gates have been built on Earth. It's completely possible to communicate face-to-face without any barriers between the major races, and after everyone's wisdom increased, although the hatred between the races still exists, it's rapidly decreasing every day. They also learn from each other's culture, and the crime rate is almost zero. Caesar stood to the side and explained the recent situation on Earth to Yi Bei in a very serious manner. During this period of time, other than Caesar, every high-ranking member of the snake tribe civilization had often come over to report to Yi Bei. After all, Yi Bei was the core of the entire snake tribe, and he was also the true ruler. And quote, there are so many spatial gates. What's the energy situation? Yi Bei stuck out his forked tongue and asked curiously. We've already gained a preliminary understanding of the use of water. Moreover, after analyzing the spiritual pearl, we found that the spiritual pearl itself is a small spatial fragment. Within the fragment, we've created a large number of energy switching devices, and their main energy source is the water. The space gate is currently using this energy. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World, site only. When Caesar said this, his eyes could not help but show some pride. A large part of the credit for solving the problem of the water source was his. If the humans were still in control of the Earth, with the technology blockade of the beast god civilization, the humans would probably think that this kind of pure and uncontaminated water source was only used to purify and then put in plastic bottles to deliberately raise the price to boost the economy. They would also continue to use low-quality energy to pollute the Earth. He even found all sorts of reasons why experts had analyzed that water could not be used as an energy source. End quote. Very good, end quote. Yi Bei nodded. But at this moment, Caesar's expression became more and more serious as he continued to speak.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.